The waitress paid for his dinner with money that still smelled like sweat and fryer oil, and that was the moment Ethan Mercer realized his test had finally found the one person who couldn't afford to be tested. He sat in his car afterward, hands locked around the steering wheel of a faded Ford Escape that coughed when it started and vibrated at red lights like an old animal refusing to die. The heater worked, only when it felt like it. The windshield had a hairline crack that caught the street lamps and turned them into small fractures of light. The car was not his. It was a costume. Ethan owned a penthouse downtown with windows so tall, the city looked like a model built for him alone. He owned a company that quietly held contracts with half the institutions that claimed to move the future forward. He owned a life that, on paper, should have made him untouchable, but life had touched him anyway. 2 years ago, he had stood in a conference room that smelled like toner and stale coffee, while his wife, Lauren, signed her name with the calm of a woman closing a door she planned to never open again. She didn't scream, she didn't throw anything. She simply said, "I need more," the way someone might say they needed milk from the store. Ethan had nodded. He always nodded. He had learned that pleading only made people feel justified. A month later, he learned the more had a name and a title. It was his CFO, a man Ethan had trusted with numbers, and, without realizing it, with the parts of his life that mattered more than numbers. The betrayal didn't come with fireworks. It came with quiet emails and clean signatures and lawyers who spoke in gentle tones while dividing a heart into percentages. After the divorce, Ethan told himself he was protecting Noah, his 7-year-old son. He told himself he couldn't risk bringing someone into their home who loved the view more than the people standing in front of it. So, he built a ritual. He stopped dating like a man looking for partnership and started dating like a man running a safety check. He chose modest restaurants, the kind with printed menus and soft lighting, and he would wait for the moment when the check arrived like a verdict. Then he would forget his wallet, or discover a declined card, or ask to split the bill with the apology already prepared in his voice. Some women laughed like it was a joke they didn't want to be part of. Some turned suddenly cold. Some invented emergencies. One looked at him as if he had tried to borrow her dignity. 17 times, the pattern repeated itself until it felt like proof. And tonight, date number 17, had ended the same way. The woman had ordered the most expensive dish without asking the price. When the card declined, she had stared at Ethan, blinked twice, then said, "I'm not in a place to carry someone else right now." As if love was a suitcase. As if people were luggage. Ethan had paid, of course, after she left, quietly. Without the waitress seeing the second card he kept tucked behind the first. He left a tip that could have covered a week of groceries for most families, then drove away in the borrowed skin of poverty and felt nothing except a hollow ache that had become familiar. He was still driving when he saw the neon sign. Open 24 hours. Under it, smaller letters, hot coffee, pie. The diner sat near the highway like something the modern world had forgotten to demolish. The sign flickered on the last syllable of open. A thin layer of snow lined the curb, and the parking lot held a few tired cars that looked like they had nowhere else to be. Ethan told himself he was stopping for coffee. He told himself that even as he parked and noticed, through the fogged window, a waitress leaning toward an elderly man with trembling hands. The man's water glass tipped, spilling onto the table. Ethan braced for the sigh, the eye roll, the irritation people wore these days like armor. But the waitress did none of that. She smiled. Not the forced curve of customer service. A real smile, warm and unguarded. She placed her palm lightly on the old man's shoulder, as if saying, without words, "I see you." Then she cleaned the spill with a rag and spoke softly, the way someone speaks to a person who has spent too long being treated like an inconvenience. Something in Ethan's chest shifted. Inside, the diner smelled like coffee that had been reheated one too many times, and the sweetness of pie crust. The booths were cracked vinyl, the lights were too bright, honest in a way expensive restaurants never were. A jukebox sat in the corner like a relic, humming faintly with no song playing. Ethan chose a booth near the window and sat with his back to the wall. Old habits. He watched the waitress move between tables with quiet speed. She wasn't performing kindness, she was simply doing it, the way a person breathes. When she reached his booth, she held a small notepad and a pen that had chewed edges. "Coffee?" she asked. Her hair was pulled into a messy bun, but strands had escaped and softened her face. Her eyes looked tired, the kind of tired that sleep doesn't fix, but they were steady, clear. Black, Ethan said. She nodded. Coming up. A minute later, she set the mug down and glanced at him, just once, like a person who notices without staring. You okay? She asked. Ethan almost laughed. People didn't ask that. Not with sincerity, not without wanting something. He swallowed. Yeah, he lied automatically. She tilted her head as if she could hear the lie, but didn't feel the need to punish him for it. Long day? Yeah, he admitted, and the truth felt strange on his tongue, like a language he hadn't spoken in years. She gave a small smile. Most days are. She turned to leave, then paused. If you want pie, the apple's fresh. Ethan didn't order pie. He watched the steam rise from his coffee instead. He watched the waitress help a teenage boy carry out a to-go bag while teasing him about forgetting his jacket. He watched her refill a woman's mug without being asked. He watched her move as if she had no spare time, and yet she still spent it on being gentle. When he finally stood to leave, he slid money under the mug. Not too much. He didn't want to be noticed as generous. He wanted to remain invisible, the way he had trained himself to be when it came to his own wealth. But as he passed the counter, the waitress looked up. Thanks, she said, and there was no calculation in it, just gratitude, simple and clean. Outside, the cold slapped his face awake. Ethan climbed back into the Ford Escape and sat for a long moment before turning the key. He looked at the diner window, at the blur of warm light behind it, and felt something he hadn't felt since before the divorce. Curiosity, not about whether she would pass a test, about who she was when no one was watching. He drove away slowly, already knowing he would come back tomorrow, telling himself it was just coffee, just a place to sit, just a break from the weight of his own thoughts. But deep down, he knew he had just found the first crack in the wall he'd built around his heart. And cracks, once they start, never stop at one. Tomorrow. Ethan told himself he was only coming back for the apple pie. That was the lie he chose because it sounded harmless. It sounded normal. A man returning to a diner because he'd been reminded that food could still taste like comfort. But as he pulled into the same small parking lot the next afternoon, he knew the truth was simpler and far more dangerous. He was coming back for the way she had looked at him when she asked, "You okay?" Not as a customer, not as a wallet, as a human being. The neon sign still flickered on the last letter of open. In daylight, the diner looked even older, like it had survived by being too tired to die. The windows wore streaks from last night's snow. A delivery truck idled beside the back door. Inside, the air carried the smell of coffee, fryer oil, and something sweet that reminded Ethan of childhood mornings when his father used to make pancakes before work. He hadn't thought about his father in years. That was what unsettled him most. This place was doing something to him. It was pulling old memories up like roots. He stepped in, shook snow off his boots, even though there was barely any, and slid into the same booth near the window. Same position, back to the wall. He ordered black coffee again, and when she came to his table with the pot, he saw the faint bandage on her thumb from a burn and the way her shoulders held tension, as if she were always bracing for the next demand. Maya, her name tag read. Yesterday he hadn't read it, or maybe he had, but his brain had refused to let her become real. Real people made tests harder. She filled his mug and looked at him with a hint of recognition. "You're back," she said. "Yeah," Ethan replied, and immediately disliked how that sounded, like he owed her an explanation. "The apple pie didn't leave my head." Maya's mouth tugged at one corner. "That pie has a habit of doing that." She started to turn away, then paused. "Table 9 again, consistent. I respect it." Ethan blinked. "Is that my table now?" "Not officially," she said, "but I've watched you pick the same seat twice. That's basically a relationship in diner terms." He surprised himself by laughing. It wasn't loud. It wasn't free. It felt like something that had been locked up and was now remembering how to move. Maya went on, and Ethan watched her work. He watched her wipe down a sticky table without complaint. He watched her take an order from a man who never looked at her eyes. He watched her bring extra napkins to a young mother whose toddler was crying, and she did it with the quiet efficiency of someone who had lived around exhaustion long enough to stop dramatizing it. At one point, an older woman at the counter snapped, "This coffee tastes like it's been sitting since Reagan." Maya didn't flinch. "It probably has," she said, then topped off the mug anyway and added, "Wafter, I can make a fresh pot if you want. The older woman's face softened, almost against her will. No, don't do that. You look like you've been running all day. Maya's smile was small but honest. I have. But thank you for noticing. Ethan stared down into his coffee after that, because something inside him had twisted in a way he couldn't name. He was a man with resources. He could fix 100 problems with a phone call. Yet, here was a woman doing the hardest kind of work. The kind that asked for kindness even when people didn't deserve it, without applause, without a safety net, without anyone promising it would pay off. And somehow, she still had more grace in her tired hands than most people he knew in tailored suits. He stayed for nearly an hour, long enough to notice the rhythms of the place, long enough to notice that Maya always checked on the same 3 regulars first, that she saved the corner booth for a man who came in with a newspaper and sat in silence, that she remembered the name of the teenager who came in after school and always ordered fries with too much ketchup. When Ethan finally stood to leave, Maya appeared beside the booth like she'd been waiting for him. You want pie today, or are you just going to keep flirting with the idea? She asked. Ethan hesitated. I didn't think I was that obvious. You're not obvious, she said, leaning one elbow against the booth. You're just quiet. Quiet people are either thinking a lot or carrying a lot, usually both. The sentence hit too close. Ethan cleared his throat. Apple, if it's still fresh. It is, she said, and the way she said it felt like more than food, like a reassurance he hadn't asked for. When she set the pie down, Ethan noticed her hands. They were rough around the knuckles, small scars that looked like the kind that you get when you work with heat and hurry. A faint tremble in one finger that vanished when she gripped the plate. Her nails were clean but short, practical. Busy day? Ethan asked, because he didn't know how else to start. Maya exhaled through her nose, a sound that was almost a laugh. It's always busy when you're the only one trying to keep the ship from sinking. That sounds unfair. Maya's eyes lifted to his. Life doesn't ask permission before it's unfair. Then she turned to go, because that was what people like her did. They dropped truth on the table, like silverware, and moved on to the next task. Ethan ate his pie slowly, tasting cinnamon and something else. Something like the memory of being taken care of. On his way out, he passed the counter and saw, tucked under it, a small plastic pill organizer, the kind with days of the week. He didn't mean to stare, but his eyes caught it like a hook. Maya followed his gaze and stiffened. Not much, just a fraction. Enough for Ethan to see the protective instinct rise in her. My mom, she said, before he could ask. Her voice was calm, but her posture had changed, guarded. I bring her meds here sometimes because I go straight from my morning job to this one. If I don't carry them, she forgets. I'm sorry, Ethan said, and meant it. The words felt too small. Maya shrugged. It is what it is. Ethan knew that phrase. It was what people said when they had no room for self-pity, when complaining didn't change anything, when survival was a schedule. He nodded once. You take care of her alone? Maya's eyes sharpened. Why? The question wasn't rude. It was defensive, the kind of defense that comes from too many people offering sympathy and then disappearing. Ethan chose his answer carefully, not because he was manipulating her, but because for the first time he didn't want to ruin something. Because I know what it looks like, he said quietly, to carry more than you should. Maya held his gaze for a long beat, as if weighing the truth of his face. Then she looked away first, busying herself with wiping the counter that didn't need wiping. Yeah, she said. Well, you get used to it. Ethan started toward the door, then stopped. Maya, he said, and hearing her name out loud startled him, as if saying it made her more real. She glanced up. Yeah? He could feel his heart beat in his throat. It made him angry that his body could still do this, could still hope. I was wondering, he began, if you'd want to get coffee somewhere that isn't your workplace. Just coffee. 30 minutes. You pick where. Maya stared at him like he had offered her a gift she didn't have time to hold. I work 2 jobs, she said slowly, and I take my mom to dialysis 3 times a week. And when I'm not doing that, I'm doing laundry or filling out paperwork or fighting insurance people who pretend they can't hear me. I don't really date, Ethan swallowed. Then don't call it a date. Call it a break. Maya's laugh was quiet and tired. Breaks aren't free. I'm not asking you to spend money, Ethan said. Just time. Maya looked at him in a way that made Ethan feel examined, not for his wallet, but for his intention. The kind of examination that was fair. Finally, she sighed. Thursday, she said. 2 p.m., Riverside Park. I'll have 40 minutes between appointments. Ethan's chest tightened. Okay. Maya pointed her pen at him, playful but firm. And bring your own coffee. I'm off the clock. Ethan nodded. Deal. He walked out into the cold air feeling something he hadn't planned for. Not triumph, not control. Hope. And hope, he realized, was a risk he had almost forgotten how to take. Next. Thursday arrived with the kind of winter sun that looked generous from far away and stingy up close. Ethan got to Riverside Park early because waiting felt safer than being waited for. He chose a bench near a line of bare trees and a small playground where children climbed metal bars with fearless hands. He held 2 paper cups of gas station coffee and hated himself for how perfectly that fit the story he was selling. He was good at stories now. The faded jacket, the scuffed boots, the old car. The casual lines about a small apartment across town, the way he kept his real phone silenced and carried a second one with a cracked case, just in case she ever noticed. This was supposed to be controlled, but the moment he saw her walking toward him, control slipped a little. Maya looked like she had come straight from a shift. Her hair was pulled back, but strands had escaped and clung to her cheeks from the cold. She wore a thin coat that had seen too many winters and a scarf wrapped tight like armor. In one hand she carried a canvas tote bag, heavy enough to pull her shoulder down. She was 10 minutes late. She arrived not with excuses, but with breathlessness. Sorry, she said as soon as she reached the bench. My mom's ride got delayed and I had to call the clinic, and then the clinic put me on hold, and then, you know how it is. Ethan stood without thinking, like he could somehow make room for her life. It's fine. Maya nodded once, as if storing that away. Then she looked at the 2 coffees in his hands. Please tell me those aren't from the fancy gas station on 12th. Ethan blinked. They are. Maya closed her eyes like she was in pain. You're brave. He laughed, and the sound came out easier than it should have. I didn't want to insult your rule. My rule is, never trust anyone who says gas station coffee is fine, she replied, then took the cup from him anyway. But I appreciate the effort. They sat down. Maya left a careful space between them. Not cold, just cautious. Like someone who had learned that closeness should be earned. For a minute, neither of them spoke. The park carried its own noise. Distant traffic, a dog barking once, the squeak of a swing. Ethan watched a father push his daughter and felt a familiar pinch behind his ribs. Maya took a sip of coffee and made a folk that was almost comedic. This tastes like regret, Ethan smiled. I thought it was just me. Next time, she said, we do tea. I can make tea. Ethan's throat tightened on the word next. He hadn't expected her to offer a next time. Not yet. Not after a single conversation at a diner booth. He glanced at her tote bag. You said your mom's ride got delayed. Dialysis? Maya's eyes moved to his, then away again. She nodded. 3 times a week. That's a lot. It is, she said simply. It turns time into something you measure in machines. 2 hours here, 1 hour there, waiting rooms, paperwork. People ask how she's doing like it's casual. I say she's okay because saying the truth makes them uncomfortable. Ethan wanted to tell her he understood, that he had sat in waiting rooms too. But his waiting rooms had been different. Private clinics, quiet hallways, doctors who smiled too quickly, bills that never frightened him, and yet still felt obscene in their own way. He chose honesty that fit inside his lie. I'm sorry, he said. That's heavy. Maya shrugged, but it wasn't dismissive. It was survival. We do what we do. She took another sip of coffee, grimaced again, then laughed softly. The laugh was tired, but it was real, and that mattered more than beauty. So, she said, turning her head toward him, what about you? You sit in a diner like you're hiding from the world. You don't seem like a guy who hangs around places like that unless you have a reason. Ethan felt the practiced answers line up in his mouth, like soldiers. Tech support, small apartment, joint custody, a life designed to sound ordinary. But Maya's expression held something steady, something that made the lie feel sharp. He spoke anyway. I work in tech support. Maya lifted an eyebrow. That sounds like a job that steals your soul. Ethan surprised himself by smiling. Some days. And you have a kid, she said, not as a question. Ethan's heart shifted. Yeah, Noah. He's 7. Maya's face softened in a way that wasn't pity. It was recognition. Single dad? Yeah, Ethan said, and the word carried more weight than he expected. His mom and I share custody. Maya stared out at the playground for a moment, watching a child chase a ball that kept rolling away. That's hard. Ethan nodded. It's hard in a way people don't talk about. Everyone assumes you're fine because you're the dad, like you're built to handle it. Maya looked back at him. Are you fine? The question landed gently, but it landed. Ethan swallowed. He could have said yes. He could have kept the wall intact. But something about the way Maya asked made lying feel like a betrayal of the only thing he had enjoyed in months. No, he admitted. Not always. Maya didn't react with alarm. She didn't rush to comfort him. She simply nodded, as if he had said something true and therefore acceptable. My mom used to tell me, Maya said quietly, that being strong doesn't mean you never fall apart. It means you fall apart and still show up. Ethan stared at her profile. Did she say that before she got sick? Maya's jaw tightened a fraction. She said it after, when I was angry at the world and thought anger could fix things. Ethan felt his chest ache with a strange familiarity. Did it? Maya gave a faint smile. No, but it made me feel less alone while nothing changed. They sat in silence again, and this time the silence didn't feel like empty space. It felt like something shared. Ethan glanced down at his hands around the coffee cup. Noah has therapy, he said, before he could stop himself. Maya turned. What kind? He hesitated. He didn't want to weaponize his son's struggle. He didn't want to use Noah as a bridge to Maya's sympathy, but he also didn't want to keep everything locked away. Physical therapy, he said. Some days his legs just don't cooperate. He tries so hard it hurts to watch. Maya's eyes changed, not watery, just deeper. That's brutal, she whispered. And you're doing it alone. I'm doing it, Ethan corrected. I don't know if I'm doing it well. Maya's voice was firm, the way a person sounds when they have had to become their own anchor. If you're asking that question, you're already doing it better than you think. Ethan looked up, caught off guard by the certainty. How do you know? Maya shrugged. Because the people who fail their kids never lose sleep over it. The ones who care are the ones who stay awake. Ethan felt heat behind his eyes and hated it. He turned his face toward the trees, pretending the cold had stung him. Hey, Maya said softly, and her voice had no judgment in it. You don't have to perform for me. Ethan's breath caught. I'm not. You are, she said gently. Not on purpose. But you keep trying to sound like you've got it under control. Like you're telling me what you think I can handle hearing. Ethan looked at her then, and he saw something he hadn't seen in the women he'd tested. He saw a person who was not trying to win. Maya reached into her tote bag and pulled out a small envelope. It was worn at the edges. See this? She asked, tapping it once. This is my budget for the week. It has numbers that decide whether my mom gets what she needs, whether the lights stay on, whether I get to pretend dinner is optional. Ethan felt his stomach twist. Maya, she held up a hand. I'm not saying it to make you feel guilty. I'm saying it so, I don't have time for games. I don't have time for people who want entertainment. I said yes to this because you looked tired in a way I recognized. That's it. Ethan nodded, throat tight. I understand. Maya studied him. Do you? Ethan wanted to say yes again, wanted to make it neat. But the truth was complicated. He understood her exhaustion. He understood her responsibility. He understood her fear. What he didn't understand was how to stop being the man who hid behind a test. Maya stood abruptly and checked her phone. I have to go, she said, and her eyes were apologetic even as her body stayed braced for the sprint back into her life. I've got 40 minutes to pick my mom up and get her settled before my shift. Ethan rose with her. Thank you for coming. Maya slung the tote bag over her shoulder. Thanks for not being weird about my schedule. Ethan hesitated, then asked the question that felt like stepping off a cliff. Can we do this again? Maya looked at him for a long moment, and Ethan didn't know what she saw. A decent man, a liar, a father, a stranger, a risk. Finally, she nodded once. Yeah, she said. But next time, bring real tea. Ethan laughed softly. Deal. Maya took 2 steps, then turned back. And Ethan? Yeah? She narrowed her eyes slightly, not unkindly. Remember what I said at the diner? Bring your truth. Then she walked away, fast, purposeful, disappearing into the winter light like someone who did not have the luxury of lingering. Ethan stood there until she was gone, feeling the cold in his lungs and something warmer in his chest. He had wanted proof that love could exist without money. What he had found was a woman who lived without safety nets and still dared to be honest. And for the first time, Ethan wondered if the test was never for her. Maybe it was for him. Still, they met again on a Sunday, because Sunday was the only day Maya could afford to give away without stealing from somewhere else. Ethan arrived early, as he always did now. He chose a bench near the river where the water moved slow and brown, carrying winter with it. He brought real tea this time, brewed at home, poured into a thermos that had once belonged to Noah's grandfather. The lid squeaked when he twisted it open. The sound felt honest. Maya came on foot, scarf pulled up, hands tucked into her sleeves. She didn't apologize for being late. She simply sat and let out a breath that seemed to come from the bottom of her chest. Today was long, she said. Then let's not make it longer, Ethan replied. She smiled at that, small and grateful, and accepted the tea. She took a sip and closed her eyes for a second. Okay, she said. You pass. He laughed. That bad? That good, she corrected. Don't get used to it. They sat shoulder to shoulder this time, not touching, just close enough that the cold had less room between them. The river slid by, indifferent to their presence. A jogger passed. A dog strained against a leash, desperate for something it could not name. Maya watched the water. My mom used to bring me here when I was a kid, she said. Before everything got complicated. Ethan waited. He had learned that waiting was sometimes the most generous thing a person could do. She'd tell me to pick a leaf and follow it, Maya continued. See where it goes. She said life moves whether you want it to or not. The trick is not letting it drag you under. Ethan glanced at her. Did it work? Maya shrugged. Some days. She pulled her phone from her pocket, checked the time, and slid it back without comment. The gesture carried weight. It meant she was choosing to stay present instead of measuring minutes. Ethan took that as permission. Can I tell you something? He asked. Maya turned to him. You're asking now? He smiled faintly. I'm learning. She nodded. Okay. Ethan stared at the river, then at his hands. There are days I feel like I'm failing Noah. Not in big ways, in the quiet ones. When I miss a school assembly because of work. When I'm too tired to play another round of a game I don't understand. When I lie awake wondering if he'll grow up resenting the things I thought I was doing for him. Maya didn't interrupt. She didn't soften it with false reassurance. My mom used to say something similar, she said when he finished. She worried she was failing me because she worked too much. I worried she was failing me because she was always tired. Neither of us realized we were measuring love the wrong way. Ethan frowned. What's the right way? Maya looked at him, eyes steady. Consistency. Showing up. Even when you're imperfect. Especially then. He let the words settle. They felt like something he could carry. A man walked by with a child perched on his shoulders. The child laughed, wind-red and fearless. Ethan's chest tightened, but the feeling passed more gently this time. Do you ever resent it? Ethan asked quietly. The responsibility. Maya considered. I resent the system, she said. I resent paperwork and waiting rooms and people who tell me there's nothing they can do, like that's the end of the story. I don't resent my mom or the fact that she needs me. I resent how hard the world makes it to do the right thing. Ethan nodded slowly. He recognized that anger. It was clean and sharp, pointed in the right direction. They talked for a while after that about ordinary things. About books they hadn't finished. About movies that made them cry unexpectedly. About the way winter seemed longer now than it did when they were younger. Ethan did not mention his company. He did not mention the view from his living room or the garage beneath it. He did not mention the second phone buzzing silently in his pocket with messages he refused to read. He watched Maya instead, the way she listened with her whole face. The way she laughed and then caught herself, as if laughter were a luxury she rationed. When she checked the time again, she sighed. I should go. Ethan nodded, though he hated how quickly the hours had gone. Thank you for today. Maya stood, slung her bag over her shoulder. Thank you for not trying to impress me. The words landed heavier than she intended. Ethan felt them as both a compliment and a warning. "I'm not very impressive," he said lightly. Maya gave him a look. "Everyone is impressive to someone. The question is who you are trying to impress." She walked a few steps, then turned back. "Next time," she said, "let's do something boring. Grocery shopping, errands, real life." Ethan's heart jumped. "You're inviting me to run errands?" Maya smiled. "If that scares you, we're probably not compatible." "It doesn't scare me," he said quickly. She laughed. "Good." That night, Ethan lay awake in the small guest room he used when Noah was at his mother's house. The room was quiet in a way that made thoughts louder. He stared at the ceiling and thought about Maya's words, about consistency, about systems, about how easy it would be to make her life lighter with a signature. He didn't do it, not yet, because for the first time, he wanted to know who she was without his money bending the shape of things. He wanted to meet her where she stood, not where he could lift her to. The next Saturday, they walked through a grocery store with a short list and no plan. Maya compared prices with the focus of a chess player. Ethan pushed the cart and tried not to offer solutions that came from a different universe. At the checkout, the line moved slowly. A woman ahead of them argued with the cashier about coupons. Maya didn't sigh. She didn't roll her eyes. She waited, patient, grounded. Ethan watched her and felt something settle in his bones. When they stepped outside with bags cutting into their fingers, Maya smiled up at him. "See? Boring." Ethan smiled back. "Perfect." It was later that afternoon, as they parted ways at the corner, that Maya said it. "I like you," she said plainly. "But I need to say something before this goes anywhere." Ethan stilled. "Okay. I can't afford surprises," Maya continued. "I can't afford to be someone's lesson. If you're hiding something from me, I'd rather know now." Ethan's mouth went dry. He thought of the tests, of the lies, of the careful story he was still telling. "I'm not hiding anything that would hurt you," he said, choosing his words like glass. Maya searched his face. Then she nodded. "All right." She stepped back, giving him space. "Then we keep going, slowly." Ethan watched her walk away, the winter light thinning around her, and felt the weight of what he had not said press against his ribs. He had promised himself he would never be loved for his money again. But he was beginning to realize that the greater danger was being loved for a version of himself that wasn't whole, because. The restaurant Ethan chose was not expensive. That was the first thing he told himself, as if price alone determined morality. It was a small Italian place tucked between a nail salon and a closed travel agency, the kind of restaurant that survived on regulars and handwritten specials. The lighting was warm but not flattering. The menu had fewer adjectives than dishes. It was the sort of place where the bill mattered, but not enough to feel theatrical, which made it perfect. Ethan hated how quickly that thought came to him. Maya arrived 10 minutes late, breathless, cheeks flushed from the cold. She wore a simple blue sweater and jeans that had been mended at one knee with careful stitches. She apologized once, then stopped herself, like she was tired of apologizing for existing. "Dialysis ran long," she said. "Mom fell asleep in the chair and they didn't want to wake her." "That's okay," Ethan replied. "I'm glad she got rest." Maya studied him for a second, then smiled. "You always say the right thing." The sentence landed strangely. Praise made him uneasy now. Praise made him feel like he was getting away with something. They ordered. Maya chose the cheapest pasta without comment. Ethan noticed and didn't push, remembering her words about surprises and lessons. They talked about nothing and everything. A documentary Maya had half-watched while folding laundry, a science project Noah was struggling with, the way the city felt louder at night. Ethan laughed more than he expected to. Maya did too, though hers came in shorter bursts, like she was careful not to spend it all at once. When the check arrived, the air changed. Not dramatically, just enough. The server set the black folder down between them and walked away. Maya reached for her water. Ethan felt his heartbeat in his throat. This was the moment. He had rehearsed it. He knew how his face should fall, how his hands should search his pockets with just enough panic to feel real. He knew how long to wait before speaking, how to let embarrassment do the work for him. He hated that he knew. Ethan opened his wallet slowly. He pulled out the card he never used, the one tied to an account he kept deliberately thin. He handed it over to the passing server, then waited. The seconds stretched. He could hear his own breathing. The server returned with a practiced expression of apology. I'm sorry, sir. It didn't go through. Ethan nodded, already performing. That's strange. I must have. He checked his pockets, then his jacket. I'm really sorry. I thought I had another card. Maya watched him, not with irritation, not with surprise, with focus. I've got it, she said, already reaching into her purse. Ethan's chest tightened. Maya, you don't have to. It's fine, she said calmly. It happens. She pulled out two 20s and placed them in the folder without ceremony. The motion was practiced, confident, like this was not the first time she had solved a problem quietly. Ethan felt something sour rise in his stomach. Maya, he said, hating the tremor in his voice. I'll pay you back. She looked up at him then, really looked, and for the first time since he'd met her, there was something sharp in her eyes. I'm sure you will, she said. Then she paused. But I want to ask you something. Ethan's heart dropped. Okay, he said. She leaned back in her chair, folding her hands together. Are you testing me? The question was not loud. It did not accuse. It cut anyway. Ethan's mind raced. He could tell the truth. He could end this cleanly, right now, before the lie grew roots. He could explain his fear, his history, his logic. He could also lie. No, he said. The word left his mouth easily. Too easily. Maya held his gaze for a long moment. The restaurant noise filled the space between them, clinking silverware, a burst of laughter from another table, the low hum of music. Okay, she said finally. Ethan exhaled, a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. Maya stood and gathered her coat. Let's go. Outside, the night was colder than expected. Maya wrapped her scarf tighter and started walking toward the bus stop. Ethan followed, guilt heavy in his chest. At the corner, she stopped. I need to say something, Maya said, turning to face him. Okay. I paid tonight because I wanted to, she continued. Not because I felt obligated. Not because I was proving anything. But I want you to hear this clearly. Ethan nodded. I don't have room in my life for games, she said. I don't have time to impress people or pass tests I didn't sign up for. If I ever feel like I'm being measured instead of known, I will leave. Her voice did not waver. Ethan swallowed. That's fair. Maya studied his face, searching for something. Good. She stepped back, giving him space. Text me when you get home. Ethan watched her walk away, her figure shrinking beneath the streetlights, and felt the weight of what he had just done settle into his bones. He drove home in silence. The Ford Escape rattled as usual, but tonight the noise felt accusatory. He parked, climbed the stairs of his building, and stepped into an apartment that was not small, not modest, not anything like the story he told. The lights turned on automatically. The city spread out beyond the windows like something owned. Ethan stood there, coat still on, and thought about the 20s Maya had laid down on the table, about the way her hands had not hesitated, about the way she had asked him the question he was most afraid of. Are you testing me? He sank onto the couch and rubbed his face. This had been his system, his protection, the thing that kept him safe, and now it felt like a weapon. His phone buzzed. A message from Maya. Home safe? Ethan stared at the screen. Yes, he typed. Thanks again. I owe you. A moment passed. You don't owe me anything, she replied. Just honesty. Ethan set the phone down and leaned back, staring at the ceiling. He had crossed a line tonight, not because he'd let her pay, but because he had heard the truth in her question and chosen himself over it. And somewhere deep down, he knew that if he didn't stop now, the cost of the lie would soon be more than he could afford. Until... Ethan almost canceled. The message sat half-written on his phone while he stood in the hallway tying his shoes for the third time. He told himself it was practical. Noah had therapy in the morning. The weather was colder than expected. Maya worked too much already. Any of those reasons would have sounded reasonable. The truth was simpler and harder. He was afraid. Afraid of what it would mean if Maya saw Noah the way she saw everything else, clearly, without flinching. Afraid of what it would mean if Noah liked her. Afraid of how thin the line was becoming between the man he pretended to be and the one he was. Dad, Noah called from the living room. Is she coming? Ethan closed his eyes. Noah sat on the couch with his braces off, legs stretched out, a spaceship toy balanced on his knee. His hair was still damp from the shower, sticking up in the back, the way it always did, no matter how many times Ethan tried to smooth it down. Yeah, Ethan said. She's coming. Noah's face lit up, not with excitement exactly, but with something steadier. Curiosity. Trust. Okay, Noah said, like it settled something important. I'll put my jacket on. They met Maya at the community playground near the river. It wasn't special. A slide with chipped paint, swings that squeaked, a climbing frame with metal bars cold enough to sting bare hands. Maya arrived on foot, bundled against the wind, carrying a paper bag. "Hi," she said, smiling at Ethan, then crouching slightly to Noah's level. "You must be Noah." Noah nodded, clutching his spaceship. "You're Maya." "I am," she said. "Your dad tells me you're into space." Noah's eyes widened. "I'm into black holes. They're the coolest." Maya didn't blink. "They are," she agreed seriously. "Terrifying, but cool." Noah grinned, delighted. Ethan felt his chest tighten. They walked together, slowly. Maya didn't take Noah's hand without asking. She didn't hover. She didn't talk down to him. She listened like his words mattered, like he wasn't a problem to manage. Ethan watched, heart pounding, waiting for the moment when things might go wrong. It didn't come. They sat on a bench while Noah tested the slide, careful and determined. Maya handed Ethan the paper bag. "Tea," she said. "And a cookie for Noah, oatmeal, no nuts." Ethan stared at her. "How did you—" "I asked," she said simply. "Yesterday, when you mentioned his school." Noah returned, breathless. She remembered. "I remember things," Maya said, smiling. "It's kind of my thing." Ethan felt something warm and painful bloom in his chest. This was the danger, not her kindness, the way it made room. They talked about small things, school, work, a dog that wandered through the park and tried to steal Noah's cookie. Time passed without effort. Then, Ethan's phone buzzed. He ignored it. It buzzed again. Maya glanced at him, not nosy, just aware. Ethan checked at the screen and felt his stomach drop. Board call. Urgent. He turned the phone face down, too fast. Maya noticed anyway. She didn't say anything. She watched Noah climb. She waited. A third buzz. Ethan stood. "I need to take this. Just a second." He stepped away, voice low. He kept his back turned, but he could feel the moment stretching thin behind him. When he returned, Maya was standing now, arms folded loosely, gaze on the river. "Everything okay?" she asked. "Yeah," Ethan said too quickly. "Work thing." Maya nodded once, not accusing, observing. They walked a little more. The light shifted. The air sharpened. Noah grew tired and sat beside Maya, leaning into her coat without asking. Maya didn't move away. She stayed very still, as if she understood the weight of what was happening, and chose not to disturb it. Ethan watched from a few steps back, 1,000 thoughts colliding in his head. This was what he had feared. This was what he had wanted. When it was time to leave, Maya crouched again in front of Noah. "Hey," she said, "thanks for sharing your park with me." Noah shrugged. "You can come again." Maya smiled. "I'd like that." He hesitated, then added, "My dad's nice." Ethan's breath caught. Maya met Ethan's eyes briefly, something unspoken passing between them. Then she stood. They walked together until the corner where Maya would turn toward the bus stop. "I should go," she said. "Late shift." "Thank you," Ethan said, "for today." Maya studied him. "You okay?" The question landed heavier now. "Yes," he said. Then, after a beat, "I think so." She nodded, then paused. "Ethan." When your phone rang, he stiffened. "I don't need details," she continued. "I just need to know one thing." He waited. "Is there a part of your life you're keeping separate from me because you don't trust me with it?" Ethan opened his mouth, closed it. He could feel the truth pressing up against his ribs, demanding air. "I'm trying," he said finally, "to do this right." Maya held his gaze. "Trying is not the same as telling." "I know," she sighed, not angry, just tired. "I don't want to be someone you slowly introduce to reality. I want to be someone you meet in it." Ethan nodded. "I hear you." Maya stepped back. "Good." She turned to leave, then stopped. "I care about you," she said quietly. "But I won't stay if I feel like I'm standing in the shadow of something you won't name." Ethan watched her walk away. Noah tugged at his sleeve. "She's nice," he said. "You should keep her." Ethan laughed weakly. "I'll try." But as he walked Noah home, the city pressing in around them, Ethan knew something had shifted. The test was no longer theoretical. It had weight now, a child's weight, a woman's trust, a truth that would not stay hidden much longer. And he knew, with a clarity that scared him, that the next time Maya asked him a question, he would either tell her everything or lose her for good. When? Maya did not call that night. Ethan told himself it meant nothing, then told himself it meant everything. He put Noah to bed, read the same page twice because Noah liked the sound of it, and lingered at the doorway longer than necessary, watching his son breathe. When he finally retreated to the living room, the city stared back at him through glass that reflected his own face, older than he remembered, tired in a way money could not soften. He drafted a text and deleted it, drafted another and deleted that too. Every version sounded like a man asking for time he no longer deserved. The next morning, Noah asked, "Is Maya coming again?" Ethan knelt to tie Noah's shoes, the laces slipping through his fingers. "I don't know," he said, and hated how honest that felt. By noon, his phone rang. "Maya." "Can we talk?" she asked. Her voice was calm, but there was a distance in it that made his chest tighten. "Anytime," Ethan said. "Where?" "The park," she replied. "The bench by the river." 2. Ethan arrived early. He always did now. He sat on the bench and stared at the water until the motion blurred into something steady enough to lean on. He told himself he would tell her everything. He told himself that over and over until it began to sound like a promise. Maya arrived on foot, coat zipped, hair pulled back. She did not sit right away. She stood facing the river, hands in her pockets, as if she needed the cold to hold her upright. "Hi," she said. "Hi," Ethan replied. She sat. Not close, not far. Enough space to keep her balance. "I've been thinking," Maya began, "about Noah, about the way you look at him, about the way you listen when I talk." Ethan nodded, afraid to interrupt. "And I've been thinking," she continued, "about your phone, about the call you didn't want me to hear, about the way you talk around things when you get close to saying something real." Ethan's throat went dry. "I don't want a confession," Maya said. "I want clarity. Are you hiding something from me?" The question was simple. The answer was not. "Yes," Ethan said. Maya closed her eyes, just for a second. When she opened them, the hurt was there, sharp and controlled. "What?" she asked. Ethan took a breath that felt like stepping into cold water. "I'm not who I said I was." Maya's jaw tightened. "Meaning?" "I don't work in tech support," Ethan said. "I own the company." The words landed between them with a dull weight. Maya stared at him. "What company?" He told her. She let out a small, disbelieving laugh. "You're joking." "I'm not." She looked away, then back. "Why would you lie about that?" "Because I was afraid," Ethan said. The truth rushed now, uncontained. "Because my marriage ended when money became the only thing anyone could see. Because I started pretending to be broke on dates to see who would stay." Maya's face went still. "You tested women," she said. "Yes." "And me?" Ethan swallowed. "At first." The word hung there, ugly and undeniable. Maya stood abruptly, pacing a few steps before turning back. "You let me pay," she said quietly. "You watched me pull out money I count down to the dollar. You watched me do that and said nothing." "I hated it," Ethan said. "I hate myself for it." "That's not an answer," Maya replied. Her voice cracked, then steadied. "Why didn't you stop?" "Because I didn't know how," Ethan said. "Because telling the truth meant risking everything I'd built with you. And lying felt—" He stopped, ashamed. "Felt safer." Maya laughed once, a sound without humor. "Safer for you?" "Yes." She looked at the river, then back at him. "Do you know what it feels like," she said, "to live a life where there is no safety net? Where every decision has consequences you can't buy your way out of?" Ethan nodded. "I know something about it." "No," Maya said gently, firmly. "You know about fear. You don't know about scarcity." The word cut cleanly. "You were a tourist in my life," she continued. "You got to try on my worries, then go home to windows that don't rattle when the wind hits them." Ethan felt the truth of it settle in his bones. "I didn't mean to use you," he said. "I fell in love with you." Maya's eyes filled, but she did not let the tears fall. Love doesn't look like a test, she said. Love looks like trust. I know, Ethan whispered. I know that now. She folded her arms, bracing herself. What else? There's nothing else, he said. No more lies. Maya studied him, searching for cracks. Your car? Not mine. Your apartment? Not small. She nodded once, as if checking items off a list she never wanted to make. You told me you wanted something real, she said. You told me you were tired of games. I was, Ethan said. I am. Then why bring me into one? Ethan had no defense left. Because I was broken, he said, and I tried to fix myself the wrong way. Maya turned away, hugging herself. The river kept moving, indifferent. I can't do this, she said after a long moment. I can't build something on a foundation like that. Ethan stood. I understand. She faced him again, eyes bright with restrained tears. I trusted you with my time, with my kid's absence, with my exhaustion. I trusted you. I know, he said, and I'm sorry. Sorry doesn't give me back what I spent, Maya replied. It doesn't give me back the nights I chose this over sleep. It doesn't erase the feeling that I was being watched. I won't ask you to stay, Ethan said. I won't ask for forgiveness you don't owe me. Maya nodded, the smallest acknowledgement. Good. She stepped back. I need space. I'll give it, Ethan said. She hesitated, then spoke once more. You should tell Noah the truth, she said. Not about me, about you. Kids know when something's off. Ethan's chest tightened. I will. Maya turned to leave, then paused. For what it's worth, she said without looking at him, the parts of you that were real mattered. Then she walked away, her coat a dark line against the winter light. Ethan sat back down, the bench cold beneath him, and let the consequences arrive fully. He did not chase her. He did not call. He stayed where he was and felt the weight of a choice made too late. That evening, Noah asked again. Ethan told him the truth, carefully, honestly, without details a child didn't need. Noah listened, quiet and serious. Did you say sorry? Noah asked. Yes, Ethan said. Did you fix it? Noah pressed. Ethan shook his head. Not yet. Noah considered this, then nodded. You can still try. Ethan looked at his son and understood something he should have known all along. Trying was not asking for another chance. Trying was changing the way you lived, whether or not forgiveness ever came. That night, Ethan made calls he had avoided. He canceled meetings that did not matter. He wrote a message to Maya he did not send. He began instead to do the one thing he could do without permission. He began to take responsibility. After 3 days passed without Maya. They passed slowly, like time had decided to punish Ethan for every shortcut he had ever taken. Morning came and went. Emails piled up unanswered. Meetings were rescheduled, then canceled. The city outside his windows moved with its usual certainty. But inside his apartment, everything felt suspended. Ethan did not go to the diner. He did not drive past the bus stop where Maya sometimes stood, with her shoulders hunched against the cold. He did not invent errands that might accidentally place him near her life. For the first time in a long while, he did not chase control. On the fourth morning, Noah noticed. You're quiet, Noah said around a spoonful of cereal. Ethan looked up from his coffee. Am I? Noah nodded. You do that when you're thinking too hard. Ethan smiled faintly. Is that bad? It's bad when you forget to listen, Noah said, serious in the way only children could be. Are you listening now? Ethan set the mug down. I am. Noah hesitated, then asked the question Ethan had been dreading. Is Maya mad at you? Ethan did not lie. Yes. Forever mad? Noah asked. I don't know, Ethan said honestly. Noah frowned. Did you say sorry the right way? Ethan thought about apologies he had made in boardrooms. Polished, efficient, designed to end conversations, not open them. I don't think so, he said. Noah nodded, like that confirmed something. Then you have to fix what you broke, not just say the words. Ethan swallowed. What if I can't fix it? Noah shrugged. Then you still have to try. That's what you tell me. The words followed Ethan all day. That afternoon, his assistant knocked softly on the office door. Sir, she said, uncertain, there's a woman here to see you. She doesn't have an appointment. Ethan's chest tightened. Who? She said her name is Maya Brooks. For a moment, the room seemed to tilt. Send her in, Ethan said, already standing. Maya entered slowly, as if crossing a border. She wore her diner uniform, coat draped over one arm, hair pulled back tight. She stopped just inside the door and looked around. The windows, the height, the furniture that spoke quietly of money and permanence. "So this is real," she said. "Yes," Ethan replied. "This is real." She walked to the window, staring out at the city far below. "I've never been this high up," she said. "You can see everything from here." Ethan said nothing. Explanations felt obscene. "I didn't come to fight," Maya said. "I came because I needed to see it, needed to know I wasn't imagining things." He nodded. "I understand." She turned back to him, eyes steady but tired. "I was angry," she said. "Really angry. Not just because you lied, because you made me feel small without even realizing it." "I know," Ethan said. "And I'm sorry." Maya held up a hand. "I'm not here for apologies." She reached into her bag and pulled out an envelope, creased and thin. She placed it on the desk between them. "What's this?" Ethan asked. "My mom's medical bills," Maya said. "This month's. I'm not asking you to pay them." Ethan's breath caught. "Maya, listen," she said firmly. "I'm showing you the weight, the kind of weight you can't test someone with. You didn't just hurt my feelings. You stepped into a life where mistakes cost health, time, sometimes dignity." Ethan nodded, shame burning hot and clean. "You're right." Maya studied him. "You said you didn't want to be loved for your money, but you still used it as a shield. You let it shape every decision." "I did," he admitted. She took a breath. "So, here's what I need to know, not as your girlfriend, not as anything." Ethan waited. "If you're really sorry," Maya continued, "what are you willing to change when no one is watching?" The question landed harder than any accusation. Ethan thought of Noah's therapy appointments, of insurance forms stamped denied, of waiting rooms full of people who did not have second cards. "I'm willing to stop hiding," he said. "And I'm willing to use what I have to fix what I can. Not quietly, not as charity, as responsibility." Maya searched his face. "For who?" "For people like you," Ethan said. "And like my son." She exhaled slowly. "I don't know if I can trust you again." "I don't expect you to," Ethan replied. "But I want to become someone who deserves it, whether you were here or not." Silence settled between them. Maya picked up her coat. "I'm not saying yes," she said. "I'm not saying no." Ethan nodded. "That's fair." She paused at the door. "If you really mean this," she added, "then don't make me the reason you change. Make the change because it's right." "I will," Ethan said. Maya left without looking back. Ethan stood alone in the office long after she was gone, staring at the envelope on his desk, at the numbers that meant nothing to him and everything to someone else. That evening, Ethan sat at his kitchen table and began making calls. Not to smooth things over, not to erase guilt, but to dismantle the systems that had told too many people they were not worth helping. It was not a grand gesture. It was slow, methodical, uncomfortable, and for the first time, it felt real. Before. Change did not arrive with applause. It arrived quietly, like dust settling after a room had been shaken too hard. Ethan did not announce anything. He did not post statements. He did not gather people in glass rooms and talk about vision. He went to work in a way he had not worked in years, stripped of performance, stripped of urgency that existed only to impress. The first meeting he called was not with his executive team. It was with a woman named Denise who ran patient advocacy for a regional hospital network. She spoke quickly, efficiently, as if she had learned long ago that time was something people with power believed they owned. "You want to know why claims get denied," she said, scrolling through documents on her tablet. "It's not because the money isn't there. It's because the system rewards delay. People give up. They miss deadlines. They get tired." Ethan listened. He did not interrupt. He asked for numbers, for bottlenecks, for the exact moments where people fell out of the process and disappeared. By the end of the meeting, Denise looked at him differently. "You're serious," she said. "Yes," Ethan replied, "and I don't want a shortcut." That answer cost him more than money. It cost time. It cost leverage. It cost the comfort of pretending complexity was inevitable. Weeks passed. Ethan began leaving the office earlier on therapy days. He sat on the hard plastic chairs with Noah, filling out forms by hand. He watched parents argue with insurance representatives on speakerphone, their voices tight with exhaustion. He learned the language people were forced to speak to justify their own suffering. He stopped pretending this was someone else's problem. Noah noticed first. "You're home more," Noah said one evening, as they built a lopsided model of Saturn at the kitchen table. "I'm trying to be," Ethan replied. Noah concentrated on the glue. "Are you still sad?" Ethan considered the question. "Yes," he said, "but I'm doing something with it now." Noah nodded like that made sense. Maya would like that. Ethan did not answer. He did not see Maya, not at the diner, not at the park, not by accident. He respected the distance she had asked for, even when it felt like swallowing glass. He paid attention instead to the absence she left behind, to how much quieter the world felt without her presence softening it. 3 months passed. Winter loosened its grip. The river thawed. The city shifted towards spring with reluctant hope. One afternoon, Ethan stood in a community center gymnasium that smelled like rubber mats and disinfectant. Folding chairs were arranged in uneven rows. Parents filled them slowly, children beside them, braces in wheelchairs, and careful movements everywhere. This was not a launch. There were no banners. Ethan stood at the front of the room with Denise and 2 doctors and spoke plainly. "We built a platform," he said, "that removes some of the delays between care and approval. It doesn't fix everything, it won't save everyone, but it will stop punishing people for not knowing how to fight." A man in the second row raised his hand. "What's the catch?" Ethan met his eyes. "There isn't one." Silence followed. Not the empty kind, the kind that comes when people are deciding whether to trust. After the meeting, Ethan stayed to answer questions. He listened to stories that were not neat. He wrote down names. He did not promise miracles. When he stepped outside, the air felt lighter. His phone buzzed. A message. "Unknown number. I heard about what you're doing." Ethan's breath caught. Another message followed. "Denise told me." Maya. He did not respond immediately. He stared at the screen until the world narrowed to the space between heartbeats. Then he typed, "I didn't do it for you." A pause. "I know," she replied. "That's why I'm texting." They met again at Riverside Park, not on the bench by the river, but closer to the playground, where the noise softened the edges of everything. Maya wore a light jacket now. Her hair was loose, falling around her shoulders. She looked rested in a way that surprised him. "Hi," she said. "Hi," Ethan replied. They walked instead of sitting. "My mom's been better," Maya said. "Not cured, just steadier." "I'm glad," Ethan said, and meant it without reaching for anything else. They passed a group of kids chalking the sidewalk. Colors bled into one another. "I don't forgive easily," Maya said after a while. "I need you to know that." "I do," Ethan said. "And I don't want to be saved," she continued. "I never did." "I know," he said again. She stopped walking and faced him. "But I watched you choose something harder than staying the same. I watched you accept consequences without asking me to soften them." Ethan said nothing. Maya took a breath. "That matters." The space between them felt different now, not fragile, just honest. "I'm not ready to go back," she said. "Not to what we were." Ethan nodded. "I wouldn't want that either. But I'm willing to stand here," Maya added, "and see who you are becoming." Ethan felt something settle in his chest. Not relief, permission. They stood side by side, watching a boy push himself higher on the swing, laughing when gravity pulled him back down. Maya smiled, small and real. "Next time," she said, "we bring better tea." Ethan smiled too. "Deal." They did not touch. They did not promise. But they stayed. And sometimes, Ethan realized, staying was the most radical thing a person could do. Finally. 6 months later, the morning sounded different. Not quieter, just fuller. Ethan stood at the stove, flipping pancakes that were never quite round enough, while Noah argued from the living room about whether black holes were actually dangerous or just misunderstood. The television murmured in the background, ignored. Sunlight pushed through the windows in a way it never had in winter, landing on the counter, on the small cracks in ordinary things. "Dad," Noah called. "Maya says gravity is patient." Ethan smiled. "She's not wrong." Maya sat on the couch with a medical journal open on her lap, one leg tucked under her, hair pulled back loosely. She had cut her hours at the diner down to 4 days a week, not because she had to, because she wanted to, because she was allowed to want things again. She looked up. "Gravity doesn't rush," she said. "It just waits." Ethan set a plate down in front of Noah and leaned against the counter. He watched the two of them talk, watched the ease that had grown slowly, carefully, without pressure. He did not mistake it for perfection. They still argued. Maya hated it when Ethan tried to pay for things without asking. Ethan struggled with the instinct to solve problems by writing checks. There were conversations about boundaries that left them both tired. There were moments when the past flared up, sharp and inconvenient. But there were no tests. That was the difference. The platform Ethan had built did not change the world. It did not make headlines, but it shortened waiting times. It translated insurance language into something human. It gave parents a number they could call and reach an actual person. Denise called it progress. Ethan called it responsibility. He never told the story publicly. He never turned it into proof of redemption. He learned that some things lost their meaning when displayed. Maya's mother improved enough to laugh more often, enough to complain about the hospital food with energy. Noah's therapy showed small gains that felt enormous, steps that were steadier, muscles that responded faster, hope that did not feel like a gamble. One evening, as the city cooled into dusk, Ethan and Maya sat on the balcony, 2 mugs of tea between them. Real tea. "I still think about it sometimes," Maya said, staring out at the lights. "The first night, the diner." Ethan nodded. "Me too. I think about how close I came to walking away before I ever knew your name," she continued. "How easy it would have been. And I think about how close I came to turning you into another result," Ethan replied. "Another data point." Maya turned to him. "You didn't." "I almost did." "But you didn't," she repeated. They sat with that. "Do you regret it?" she asked. "Testing people like that?" Ethan did not answer quickly. "I regret what it took from others," he said. "I regret the moments I didn't see because I was measuring instead of listening, but I don't regret learning what fear can turn you into." Maya nodded. "Fear makes liars of good people." "Yes," Ethan said, "and truth makes them accountable." She smiled at that. "You've changed." "So have you," he said. She raised an eyebrow. "How?" "You trust more," Ethan said gently. "Not blindly, just deliberately." Maya considered it. Maybe I learned that trust isn't about being safe. It's about being willing to be honest, even when you're not. Noah stepped onto the balcony, wrapped in a blanket too big for him. "I'm tired," he announced. Maya opened her arms without thinking. Noah went to her, leaned in, and rested his head against her shoulder. She did not look surprised. She looked present. Ethan watched them and felt a quiet gratitude settle over him. Not relief, not victory. Gratitude. Later, after Noah was asleep and the dishes were done, Maya stood at the window, looking out. "You know," she said, "I used to think love had to be proven." Ethan joined her. "I used to think it had to be tested." She glanced at him. "What do you think now?" He thought of the diner, of the park, of the question that had broken everything open. "I think love is what's left when you stop checking the answers," he said. Maya reached for his hand. "Good," she said, "because I don't want to be graded." Ethan squeezed her fingers. "You never were." They did not promise forever. They did not speak in absolutes. They chose instead the steady work of showing up. Outside, the city continued on, indifferent and loud and complicated. Inside, a small family moved through an ordinary night, unremarkable in every way that mattered. Ethan no longer pretended to be broke. He no longer pretended to be invulnerable. He learned that the bravest thing he could do was stop trying to control the outcome and start living inside the truth. Somewhere, at a diner off the highway, a waitress refilled a cup of coffee and smiled at a stranger who needed it. And Ethan understood, at last, that love was not a test you passed. It was a life you chose, again and again, without guarantees. Home.